Hey, I'm Chill Hour, and this is the story of how I knocked on a fridge, and something knocked back. I thought it was a joke until I went back. And now, someone's missing, and something followed me home. Part 1. I knocked on the fridge in the woods, and it knocked back. I don't know what made me go back a second time, but I wish I never touched it, because something was inside, and I think it's still out there. I grew up exploring the woods. There are several dozen acres behind the home I grew up in. I've been through them so many times. I know just about every single tree, every hill, and every stream. There are some adjacent cow pastures around them, and several clearings. Now that I'm older, I don't go into them quite as much, but I still go for a walk through them a couple of times throughout the year. But that summer, something was different. A few weeks ago, I went for a walk through the woods. I'm just walking along when I come across an old discarded refrigerator. It's down in a fairly deep ditch. It almost looks like a sinkhole, and I've seen it before, I'm sure. The refrigerator, however, was new to me. The most intriguing part was that it was there at all. I knew exactly where in the woods I was. There's a familiar clearing that you pass through to get to it, and it was about another 25 yards into the trees. There's no footpath or trail to it. There's certainly no trails for a vehicle to get to this particular spot. Even the clearing itself is tree-locked, with no big trails. Whoever put this old kitchen appliance here hoofed it in the hard way. I was sure of it. It was an older-looking refrigerator. I would guess from the 80s, maybe the early 90s. It looked like it had been there for a little while. It was extremely dirty, and still had the remnants of dead leaves from the previous fall on top of it. It was laying face down, putting the weight of the thing on the door. I was pretty curious about it. I stumbled, slid down into the ditch to get a closer look. I walked around it, inspected it, poked at it. It's just so weird to find an old fridge in the middle of the woods, in my mind. I tried to push it over to open it, but I couldn't even budge it. This thing was sturdy, and it was heavy as all get out. It made the idea of getting it out here in the first place even more perplexing. I'm not sure what I was expecting to happen when I knocked on it. Maybe Indiana Jones would pop out. But I gave it 2 sharp knocks on the side. After half a moment, it knocked back. 2 loud, sharp knocks rang back out of the fridge. It was certainly startling enough to throw me back onto my 4th point of contact. I stared at the fridge for a moment before I got up and scrambled back up out of the ditch. I was pretty unnerved, so I quickly began the long walk back home. I was pretty paranoid the entire hike back, looking over my shoulder, jumping at every single little noise, of which there are an abundance of in the woods. Once I was back to my house, I began hypothesizing on it. There absolutely couldn't be anything inside of it. I reasoned that the most likely scenario was that when I was pushing on it, I had dislodged something inside of it, and that something came loose and fell and made the noise inside of the fridge. That sounded good to me. Last week, I decided to go back. I planned on taking a camera with me, but as my camera was my phone, and my phone had recently had a losing fight with the washing machine, I decided to take my parents' old film camera. The roll of film I had was pretty old, but I hoped it would work well enough. In retrospect, I wished I had waited until I got a new phone, or at least gotten a new roll of film. So I went back. After 20 minutes of crunching my way through the woods, I came to the familiar clearing. Just on the other side, I would be coming up to the ditch with the refrigerator. As I crossed the clearing, though, there was a dead cow. This isn't entirely uncommon. Cows from the adjacent pastures have made it through a hole in the barbed wire fences and wandered into the woods pretty regularly for as long as I can remember. I've come across my fair share of bones and carcasses in the past. All the same, I still went to inspect the cow. It wasn't too decomposed. Sure, there were plenty of flies and maggots, but it's summer and it's hot. Something had definitely been eating on it, though. There was some pretty obvious chewing that had happened. I chalked it up to coyotes. They've always been in the area, as evident by their occasional howling at night. Nothing struck me as particularly strange. All the same, I had 27 shots on my roll of film to use up, so I took a couple of pictures. I turned and surveyed the rest of the clearing when something else caught my eye. There was a group of stones set up on a far edge of the pasture. This struck me as being strange, because these stones were pretty large, clean, and white. Not usually the kind of stone I'm used to seeing out in the woods. As I got closer, I saw that they were set up in a small formation in front of a pile of brush. The brush was forming a small roof over some kind of a burrow. I snapped some pictures and got closer and could see that the small entrance went down into the dirt, with no bottom quite in sight. I didn't know what kind of animal could be living there, so I didn't get much closer. I backed off and decided that I had seen enough of the clearing and continued on to go document the refrigerator. I walked away quickly. I didn't stop to look at the cow again. I just wanted to be home. On the way back, I kicked something, a plain, black boot, tumbled out of the brush. It looked old, cracked, mud-caked, stained dark with something dry and peeling. Blood? Before I could do that, a loud crash came from the woods behind me. I didn't look. I ran. I took a few pictures and retreated. Between the knocking sounds a couple of weeks ago and it being open now, I was feeling a bit of paranoia. So I began walking back home. A few steps away from the edge of the ditch, I caught a flash of yellow on the ground out of the corner of my eye. I looked over to see a spent shotgun shell laying in the undergrowth. I took the couple of steps to investigate and picked it up. I reasoned with myself that it was just one of the locals deep out in the woods squirrel hunting. I dropped it and began walking home again. The rest of my walk was spent in a pretty high state of paranoia. I didn't stop at the pasture to look at the dead cow again. I went straight through and was nearly halfway back to my house. I was looking over my shoulder investigating one of those small sounds that are always present in the woods when I kicked something. It tumbled through the leaves and brushed a few feet. When I snapped my head forward to see what I had kicked, it was just a plain, black boot. I thought to myself how strange it was for there to be a deserted boot out here in the woods. No stranger than a refrigerator, I suppose. The leather was weathered and well used. It had big blotches of something dark brown on that was cracking and peeling off. I pondered about when the last time it had rained had been, when suddenly there was a loud crash in the woods behind me. I didn't even try to look behind me. I was already on edge at this point and took off running in the direction I knew was my house. Another loud crash sounded behind me, giving me an extra burst in speed. I was smacked in the face, my leaves and tree limbs, and almost tripped after getting caught on a thorny vine. When I finally broke through the tree line into my backyard, a bit battered and torn up, I ran straight through the back door and locked it behind me. It took a while to calm down. It was just a weird day, all the way around. The next day, I dropped off the roll of film at Walgreens while I was out running errands and picked up the pictures on the way home. I was pretty disappointed because the film was aged terribly and only 2 pictures came out. None of the cow, none of the refrigerator. I had one random picture of trees that I don't remember specifically taking, and one of the rock formation in front of the burrow in the clearing. Either way, I think that's the last time I'm going to go into the woods. At least for a good, long while, or until I can get my hands on a gun. I wasn't really planning on writing this all up. I thought it would be a fun story with a lot of strange coincidences to tell while drinking. But I found out a few days ago that one of our neighbors on an adjacent street hasn't been home in a couple of weeks. They haven't searched for him too much. They think he ran off with another woman, because he was that kind of guy. But I know that he likes to hunt. 2 days ago, my dog disappeared. My dog only goes outside to use the bathroom and run around the yard for a bit. She never goes into the woods, and she's never outside for more than an hour. But now she's gone. Yesterday, I went to the edge of the woods to call for her since she had been gone for over a day. I found her collar hanging in a piece of brush. I think there's something new living in my woods, and I think it followed me home. I borrowed a digital camera from a friend at work last night. I have a rotating night shift. When I came home this morning, I was sitting beside my driveway. What the hell did this used to be? Part 2. Today, my friend Max came over. I told him we were looking for coyotes or something that had been coming out during the day. I was actually trying to go back to the refrigerator. I have a rescue axe that I usually use as a machete to get through the woods. Max brought his handgun. I'm still trying to get a hold of my own gun. We set out early this morning, around 9 a.m. or so. I was on point, because I had the blade and I knew my way around. I was making a beeline for the clearing where I had seen the cow and the small burrow. I wanted to see if there were any other surprises there. We were walking for about 25 minutes. Max was pretty much just lollygagging and smoking one cigarette after another. He was trying to make small talk and joke around the entire time. I, on the other hand, was completely on edge. Every single snap, crackle, and pop from our footsteps seemed to echo in my head. I was constantly scanning around us, straining to listen. Even with Max there, with his gun, I was completely on edge and scared of what we might find. Worse yet, what might find us. We were almost to the clearing when Max stopped and shushed me. He told me he heard something. I strained to listen and couldn't hear anything. Max described what he heard as sounding like something being dragged. He pointed in a direction away from the clearing. I tried to tell him that we needed to keep going the way we were going, but he insisted that we go towards the sound he heard. After all, we were there for coyotes, as far as he was concerned. So I relented. I didn't want to admit what we were really looking for. I don't think he would have even come or believed me if I told him what was really happening. I mean, the story sounds pretty silly and paranoid when I even try to tell it to myself. I figured we could just come back around to the refrigerator and the clearing on the way back. I didn't really care. We had Max's gun. I figured the worst-case scenario is that we could at least find out what it is and slow it down. Best case, we kill the stupid thing. So we started hiking in the direction he swore he had heard the noise from. I opted to not use the axe to cut through the brush. We agreed that it'd be best to try and sneak up on the noise as silently as possible. We were going almost painfully slow, trying our best to avoid every branch and twig. We made it about 300 yards before we saw what was in front of us. It was a tiny house, decrepit, rotten, completely overgrown with vines and foliage. In my mind, I raced through my memories. I've been coming through these woods and exploring for 15 years. I thought I'd seen damn near everything there was to see in them, but somehow I'd never seen this place before. I've been a lot deeper into these woods than this, and I had somehow missed an entire house? It seemed really off to me. Max, of course, was overly excited about it. He wanted nothing more than to explore the place. It certainly looked abandoned, with all the overgrowth. What few windows we could see were broken out. Not to mention that it was out here in the middle of nowhere, with no trails or roads to speak of leading to it. So we went in. I have to admit, I was curious as to what we could find in there, myself. Maybe it had a clue. Maybe it's where the refrigerator came from, considering it was the closest thing resembling a house to where I found the refrigerator by quite a distance. It was small inside. There were only about 5 small rooms. We slowly crept through them, one by one. I didn't want to stay in there for very long. I had my camera out and was taking quick snapshots, but I wasn't exactly trying to frame my shots or anything. Not a whole lot happened at first. The floor creaked with every step, so my adrenaline was already pumping, but we didn't find or hear anything particularly impressive. That is, until we got to the last room. The last room was covered in the black plastic plant food bags, but these had symbols drawn on them in gold paint. I tried to take a half-decent picture, but it's right about then that something came into the house. We heard loud creaking coming from the small, narrow hallway. It sounded like something dragged itself in. There were loud shuffling sounds. Suddenly, a thump. It sounded like something had fallen. Max and I squeezed up beside the door, listening with bated breath. I hadn't noticed, but Max had drawn his gun. We sat there, completely silent, nearly forgetting to breathe, when the chewing began. At least, it sounded like chewing. It sounded like some combination of chomping, licking, and sucking. It's hard to describe, but I'm sure most of you reading this will have an idea of the sound I'm talking about. I looked around the room from behind Max, looking for a way to escape, just in case. There was a small window a few feet up. It looked like it would be easy enough to get through. Beside the window was a belt hanging from a long, rusted nail. Dangling from the belt was a large knife of some type in a scabbard. I moved to get it. I had my axe, sure, but I figured an extra weapon couldn't hurt. I moved to take it off of the wall. Unfortunately, I took a wrong step. As I put my weight on a foot, reaching for the knife, a loud creak rang out. I locked eyes with Max. The chewing, slurping, chomping, whatever had stopped. Seconds seemed to last hours as everything was completely silent. My worst fear came true. The sound of something thumping and dragging its way down the hall began. Max motioned for me to go out of the window. He didn't have to tell me twice. I was out of the window within a few seconds. I turned around, waiting for him to come out. Suddenly he yelled, "What the fuck?" as 2 shots from his gun rang out, echoing around me. I yelled for him. He tumbled out of the window 2 seconds later. He yelled for me to run. I ran. He followed behind me as I crashed through the woods, wildly swinging my axe around, feebly trying to clear a path for us. We were probably about 3-4 of a mile from my house. We made it there through the dense underbrush in about 10 minutes. In retrospect, it was a pretty remarkable time with how thick the woods and undergrowth are. When we arrived, Max was pale. He didn't speak. I tried to find out what he saw, what he shot at. He sat at my kitchen table, staring down. He chugged a bottle of water. After the color began to return to him, he left. Didn't say a word to me. He just walked out of the front door, got in his car, and drove away. He hasn't answered my calls or texts since then. I'll try to find out something more when he's had a chance to sleep on it for a day or two. Here's some of the pictures I took. Most of them are low quality, because I was trying to get out as quickly as possible. I apologize for that. But it should give you a vague idea. I should probably tell you about the knife. We had gotten back to my house before I realized I had taken the knife and slung it over my shoulder. After some research, I think it's a bayonet from a Garand rifle from World War II. It looks pretty banged up. I took some pictures of it. I'd love to hear what you guys think. Why was this knife in that house? What were those symbols? Is that house where the refrigerator came from? What did Max see? What the hell is happening in the woods behind my house? Most of all, what the hell do I do now? I went to Max's apartment. He wasn't home, so I assumed he was at work. I waited until he got home. I was sitting there for about 2 hours. He wasn't particularly jovial to see me, as you can probably imagine. He let me in and put his handgun on coffee table before he sat down on his chair. That struck me as strange, because he doesn't usually carry his handgun to work. I'm not 100% on whether or not he's even allowed. All the same, I came to get at least a couple of answers, so I wasn't leaving until I did. The first and most important thing, in my mind, that I asked him, "Did you shoot a person? Do I need to call the police?" The answer was an emphatic no. He told me, with no uncertainty, that what he fired his gun at was not a person. He wasn't even sure if he hit it or not, and he wasn't about to stick around to find out. I tried to get him to tell me what he saw. He wouldn't describe it. All I could get out of him was that it had dragged half of animal in, and looked like it had been ripping it apart. He also said that it was crawling towards us down the hall when he looked out and saw it, and fired 2 wild shots at it before he tumbled through the window after me. He told me the worst part was the eyes. He told me that even though it was half covered in blood and gore, that he couldn't get the image of its eyes out of his head. He couldn't tell me what color it was, whether it looked humanoid or walked like a bear or anything. Just these huge, evil, slit pupil eyes. He said the part that clenches his gut the most, the absolute worst thing, is that when he looked into its eyes, he saw something intelligent. He said he just knew that whatever was behind those eyes knew what he was, who he was, and what he was capable of. Like it had probed into his head during that brief second of eye contact. What if this thing actually is not just some weird animal? Could it actually be capable of evil, instead of just survival? The concept terrifies me more than I can imagine. Max told me not to go into the woods. He told me I could stay with him. I accepted. I came back home to pack a few things to last me for a few days. I figure as long as I'm out of here by dark, I'll be fine. It doesn't seem like it's all that willing to come out into the open during the daytime. I hope that's true. I'll keep you updated. Part 3. Things have certainly escalated. Quickly. I'm not sure what actually happened. I was packing a bag to stay at Max's for a few days. I had every intention of getting out of there well before nightfall. I was sitting in front of the computer, hitting refresh here on Nosleep every few seconds, hoping somebody would pop out with something new that I could use. Unfortunately, it's still all conjecture. I put my face in my hands, and suddenly I shot back awake several hours later. It was nighttime. A quick glance at my watch showed me past midnight. The first thing I noticed is how dark it was. The second thing I noticed was how quiet it was. It was eerie quiet. No hum of the AC, no quiet whoosh of the ceiling fan. I tried to turn on my desk lamp. Nothing happened. My computer was dead. It was a full moon, so I could see some vague shadows created by the dim light coming through the window. I peered through the blinds out to my driveway, where there's normally a street light lighting up my car. Nothing. I could just see the dim silhouette of my car. The power was definitely out. I stumbled through the room and into the hallway. I made it into the bathroom through my bedroom, and blindly fumbled until I found the cabinet under the sink. I pulled out 2 of those candles in the painted glass Jesus Loves You jars. What can I say? They last a long time, and they're cheap at the dollar store. I found the box of kitchen matches I kept with them, and lit both of them up. Now I could at least see where I was going. I heard a crack of thunder in the distance. It might be the first time where a crack of thunder made my blood run cold. Normally I enjoy the sound. It's comforting. Relaxing. This time, though, all I could think about was, if it's coming this way, what little light I have from the moon is going to disappear. I really didn't want to be stuck in total darkness with only a couple of Jesus candles to keep me company. I certainly wasn't going to go outside. Thunder cracked again. Closer. The already dim moonlight got dimmer. I stood there, staring out of a window. For several minutes, I stood there, watching the light of the moon slowly snuff out into inky blackness, and then I was well and truly alone in the dark. There was a loud thump on the back porch. I wanted it so badly to just have been thunder, but I knew that it wasn't. Another thump, then another, and another. It sounded like it was pacing the length of the porch. I wondered if I had locked the back door when I came home earlier. I decided to at least go down to the bottom of the stairs to just check the deadbolt from a distance. I creaked my way downstairs, holding my candle out in front of me. It didn't produce much light through the painted glass, but in this total darkness, it was enough. I reached the landing and turned the corner towards the back door. I crept towards it. I could still hear it thumping along the back porch. Through the dim candlelight, I saw the deadbolt. It was unlocked. I cursed myself. I remember thinking of how stupid I had been. I had to get that thing locked before whatever was thumping along noticed. So I waited. I could hear it moving back and forth along the porch. When it sounded like it was on the far side of the porch, I sprinted to the door and hit the deadbolt. The moment the deadbolt clicked closed, a loud whump against the back door. The door shook in its hinges. It threw me back on my ass. I started scrambling backwards away from the door. And then it started tapping. Just a light tapping on the door, like it was poking a finger. I was scared shitless. Somehow, my candle was still lit. I held it in front of me as I tried to crab walk away from the door. Tap, 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 tap. I made it to the stairs, and finally stood back up. The tapping stopped. I heard a couple more thumps on the back porch. It sounded like it ran off. They were incredibly close together, and then silence. For about 2 seconds. Tap, 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 tap. The tapping came from the front door, only a few feet behind me. I nearly killed myself trying to scramble back up the stairs. There were 2 small windows on either side of the front door. I didn't dare look through them. I made it to the top of the stairs and looked back down them. The tapping had stopped. I didn't hear anything for several breathless seconds. Then the thumping came back. I heard it thumping on the roof. It had gotten on the roof somehow. I could hear it thumping along, back and forth. I creeped my way towards the doorway to my man cave. I needed to get my phone. Something was here, and I needed the police. Quick, fast, and in a hurry. The thumping seemed to follow me as I crept through the upstairs hallway. It seemed to be right over me. The thought that it could somehow track me through a roof scared the shit out of me. I crept into the computer room. I could see my phone lying on the desk in front of me through the dim candlelight. I could see the blackness of the night through the blinds of the windows directly behind my desk. Except it wasn't completely black. There, just beyond the blinds, were 2 softly glowing tennis ball-sized orbs of orange light. I stopped in my tracks and stared. It seemed like minutes, but it couldn't have been more than a few seconds. I remember thinking to myself, that looks an awful lot like eyes reflecty. They blinked. Tap, 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 tap. I yelled some choice vulgarities. I dropped the candle as I ran out of the door. It snuffed out as I slammed the door closed behind me. I stumbled through the darkness. The thumping returned above me. I could see the soft glow of the other candle coming from the bathroom in my bedroom. The thumping made it there before I did. Tap, 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 tap. It was by the window in my bedroom. I slammed my back up against the wall and quickly scooted towards the bathroom, eyes locked on the window. I realized I was holding my breath. Tap, 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 tap. I couldn't see it, or those huge, glowing eyes through the blinds. I could just hear it tapping on the glass. Tap, 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 tap. I made it to the bathroom. I slammed the door behind me, locking it. I braced my back against it. I reached up to the counter and grabbed the candle. I held it between my legs and started praying. I've never been big on praying, but I suppose I was looking for all the help I could get. Through the door, I could still hear a muffled tap, 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 tap. It was silent for several seconds before I realized it had stopped. I sat there, sitting in the glow of nothing but a single candle for what seemed like ages. I heard it thumping across the roof again, directly above me. Suddenly, a huge thump on the outside wall of the house. It sounded like a cannon firing against the side of my house. It thumped again. Then like another cannon, against the adjacent wall. It knew exactly where I was. I couldn't tell if it was trying to break through, but with the booming thumps, it sure sounded like it. It seemed like hours. Every couple of minutes, another loud crash against one of the walls, or the roof around me. Occasionally, I could hear it faintly tapping on the window in the bedroom. I couldn't tell you if I cried or not. I know I wanted to. The thumping, the crashing, the tapping. It never seemed to stop. The next thing I remember was waking up. Somehow, through everything, I had fallen asleep. I checked my watch. It was almost noon. I wasn't sure when I had passed out, but I had slept a good 8 hours. It was completely dark in the bathroom. I realized my candle had gone out at some point. I could see a sliver of light coming from the bottom of the bathroom door. My throat was dry, and the air was thick and muggy in the bathroom. The power was still out. I slowly opened the door and peeked out. Nothing in my bedroom looked disturbed. I slowly made my way through the sticky heat of the house. It didn't look like anything had broken in. I decided it was time to leave. I would call the police from Max's apartment when I got there. I grabbed my bag and my laptop and made my way outside. I went through my back door, locking it behind me. I was scanning the tree line as I rounded my house going to my car. I wondered if it was watching me. As I got to my car, I stopped dead in my tracks. I dropped my bag and my laptop. It's a wonder I didn't break it. I found my dog. What was left of her, anyway. Sitting there, on the hood of my car, was the head of my dog. It looked like her neck and part of a shoulder were still attached. Half of the skin and pelt were flayed from her skull. There was just enough of her familiar, black and gray spotted pattern to recognize her. This time, I know I cried. I don't know how long I stood there crying, but it took a while. I buried my dog at the edge of the yard. I didn't care if whatever it was watching me. I didn't take pictures of my dog. I didn't think about it. Even if I had, I doubt I would have taken pictures anyway. It was the biggest gut punch I've ever experienced. Afterwards, I went and got the bayonet, and I threw it as hard as I could into the woods. I yelled at whatever the hell it was to just leave me alone. I didn't have much battery left on my phone, but I called the police. I waited for them to come. I had to wash the blood off the hood of my car, anyway. When they got there, I explained to them what had happened. The fridge, the boot, my dog disappearing, the shack, everything. They told me I could stay with a friend if I felt more comfortable until they could have a look around. They said they'd bring in some experts, or whatever, to see if there were any signs of a large animal that strayed too far from its normal habitat. They dismissed most of it as just working myself up over a whole lot of small things that coincided with one another. They told me they saw where a power line had been downed at a pole close to my driveway, and that they would get the utility company out to fix it. I drew them a small map to give them an idea of where everything was in the woods. I thought you guys might like to see it too, to get an idea of everything. I'm scared shitless right now. Whatever came to my house last night, I think it was playing with me, trying to scare me. With how it was apparently scaling the side of my house and thumping around, there's no way that it couldn't have gotten in if it had wanted to. I think I can safely say that whatever this thing isn't just a vagrant living in the woods, though. I'm at Max's apartment now. I'm still waiting to hear back from the police and animal control or whoever. I'm hoping they might have at least one answer for me. I finally told Max absolutely everything that was happening. He was rather upset that I hadn't told him all of this before I dragged him into the woods. I know one thing for certain now, though. Max was right about the eyes. I came back to Max's apartment after work. There was a black boot on the doorstep. It looked like the black boot I found in the woods back when this all first started. I threw it as hard as I could across the parking lot. Sorry, no pictures. I'm not going back outside tonight. I don't know if it's here or not. I'm really jittery. I'm waiting for Max to come home. If it followed me here, there's no telling what it's capable of next. We're going to have to deal with this one way or another. And soon. Fuck my life. Part 4. First, I'd like to apologize for the long delay in between substantial updates. It's been a pretty quiet week, and the amount of trolls I've had showing up in the comments in my PMs has really kept me from being motivated to stay that active here. First off, the police didn't find anything. The fridge was found. The shack was found. They said that the shack did seem to be an old grow house, but couldn't find any evidence of it having been used any time recently. They also didn't tell me anything substantial about graffiti. They just didn't find anything. Power company fixed my power the afternoon after. They said a line had been ripped down, but they couldn't tell what by. There's not really a tree nearby, so they couldn't say whether it had been some freak tree limb or not. I don't know. I've been with Max. We haven't talked much about it. I'm not pushing him to describing what he saw. The glowing eyes were enough for me. Last night, as I mentioned in a short update at the end of the last update, I found a boot that I think might be the brother of the one I originally saw back in those woods. After Max came home, he was livid about it. He's not happy about the idea that it's followed us to his home. It's hard to describe how guilty I feel. He shouldn't have been a part of this, and now it's coming to his home? I don't really know how to put it other than that it sucks a big one. So, we made a plan. We're going to go back. He wants to go back to the fridge, and the shack. He wants to see if we can find a clue, or some kind of evidence of this thing. Obviously, he's bringing his gun. We planned on going today, since we both have the day off work. Hopefully it's not back home yet, since it took so long for it to leave us its little present at his house. That was the plan, anyway. I woke up this morning at around 7 a.m. I couldn't sleep. Max was gone. I tried texting him, calling him. I never got further than his voicemail. I was really fucking hoping he was out running errands. I waited for him for a few hours. He never came home. He never called me back. So I went back to my house, by myself. I was hoping I'd only have to pull down the driveway and be able to turn back around. As I feared, however, Max's car was there already. I won't lie, even though it hasn't been quite as active during the daytime, I was terrified and paranoid just walking around the driveway. He left a note on the windshield. Yeah. Fuck. He's already been here for several hours, at least, and hasn't made it back to the car. I think whatever that thing is still might have beat us back here. It must be fast. And durable. Someone else asked in the last story if the thing had caused any damage to the house, since it was thumping around. So I walked around looking for any sign that it had been there. This is the only thing I could find. There were no marks on the side of the house anywhere that I could see. All I found was this piece of shingle material in the backyard. I couldn't exactly see where it had been dislodged from. I also thought I'd show a picture of the window that it had been hanging out in front of when I saw its eyes that night. Nothing really that it could hang on to or stand on very easily. I found one other thing. I actually found it almost as soon as I got there, but I thought I'd get the more mundane stuff out of the way first. This was on my front porch. I think whatever it is brought these for me. It brought the bayonet back. It also brought this slightly older-looking pump shotgun. The shotgun was empty except for one unused shell in the chamber. It's 20 gauge. It also looks exactly like the empty shell I found in the woods. After I finished looking around, I went to Walmart. I found a box of 20 gauge shells and brought it back with me. I'm not sure of the legality of this shotgun, but at least I have a real weapon now. That makes me feel pretty empowered. I'm keeping it loaded and in my hand at all times tonight. I'm staying here tonight. I almost went out into the woods, but there's a storm rolling in, and it's starting to get closer to nighttime. I feel reasonably safe having this with me now, though. I even went out and shot at a few cans of old food from the pantry just to get used to it. If it comes tonight, I'll be as ready for it as I'll ever be. I might have a couple of drinks for my nerves. It's going to be a long night, regardless of where I'm sleeping. I wanted to know that as afraid as I am, that I'm not running this time. Sorry for the lack of action in this update. My gut tells me that things are coming to a boiling point. I go into the woods in the morning when I have plenty of daylight. Hopefully it won't be too stormy or muddy then. I'll update the few of you who've actually believed me, and not talk down to me like I'm stupid, or a pussy, or a liar if anything happens between now and then. Thanks, guys. Part 5. Sorry that it took so long. As a result of the, events on Saturday, I ended up with a concussion, and was held in the hospital overnight, and I've been slowly trying to put it all back together in my head since then. My head is pounding. I'm not sure what woke me up on Saturday morning. I had been drinking, I'm not going to lie, and I must have dozed off, but no strange noises or thumping or tapping at the window. It left me alone Friday night. When I woke up, I was a bit hungover. I couldn't remember what woke me so suddenly. I think it might have been a noise, but between the hangover and the head injury that came later, it's pretty fuzzy to me. I walked around the perimeter of the yard looking to see if there was anything. I found something. I'm pretty sure it's the tail end of a broken arrow. The end is broken off clean, but it's got an uglier snap halfway through what's left. I'm not sure how to date broken wood, but it looks like a pretty fresh break. It looks like it might have real feathers instead of fake ones, but I'm not sure. They're really screwed up and ripped up. Also looks like it was tied together with sinew or something. Where the hell did this arrow come from? Why is it broken at the edge of the yard? Is someone else involved in all this? If so, are they on my side? It took me a little while to get my nerve up. I paced the perimeter of the woods for a long time. I had the camera in my pocket, but I didn't really plan on using it much. It took 2 hands to work that long-ass shotgun, and I wasn't about to put it down to take a picture. I had the bayonet slung over a shoulder. And no, for those of you who asked, it won't fit on a shotgun. Eventually, I just plunged into the woods. I can't even describe the amount of anxiety. I'm not much of a hunter, so creeping through the woods with a weapon on the ready, swinging to aim at nearly every little noise was intense, I suppose. It seemed like it took me hours to get through the woods to the clearing. I had decided to go towards the refrigerator first. The clearing was near empty. I could still see bits and pieces of where the cow used to be, but it was all skeletal. It looked like it had been picked clean. I could still see the rocks piled in front of the burrow. I edged towards it. It seemed like time was standing still. I couldn't even hear the familiar sounds of birds. I peeked into the burrow, but I couldn't see all the way into it. It went pretty deep. I thought about just emptying a few shells into it, just in case, but decided it'd probably be better to not make it super obvious that I was there, if it didn't already know. I continued on to the refrigerator. I stopped at the edge of it and looked down at it. It was rolled back, closed again. I didn't have much of an opportunity to think about whether or not I wanted to open it again. That was a loud cracking in the trees above me. I swung to aim the shotgun above me, just in time for something to drop down from the branches almost on top of me. I was knocked backwards from the weight of it. Because it's my luck, I fell right into the ditch. I rolled down, desperately trying to cling onto the shotgun, before wham. The back of my head slammed into the fridge. My vision went white for a split second, before quickly being replaced by stars. I'm sure I yelled or screamed. My memory is a little fuzzy. I could see what had fallen on me. I'll try my best to describe it, but between the stars and the unbelievability of it all, I don't know exactly how accurate it would be. It was standing up on 2 legs. It looked almost human. It was covered in some kind of fur, somewhere between a dark tan and a grayish color. The knees were reversed from a human's. It looked ridiculous, like it shouldn't be able to stand. I could catch a small glimpse of a tail behind it. The arms looked very human. The fingers were stubby, but definitely were fingers. It had claws. Really big fucking claws. The head looked almost human. It had triangular ears. It had a pushed-up nose. It had a mouth full of very, very sharp-looking teeth. And it had huge eyes. Ridiculously huge. Not quite the tennis ball sized I thought I had seen reflecting, but not too far off the mark. It let out a loud, impossibly shrill shriek. It made my head pound harder than it already was. It was truly ear-splitting. It crouched down and released another howl. And then it was on me. It moved so fast I barely had a chance to react. I still had the shotgun in both hands, and raised it up. It slammed on top of me. I thought I tore a tricep trying to push it back off of me. It had one hand, paw thing on the shotgun, pushing it down towards my throat. Its other hand was yanking my hair, pulling my head to the side. Its mouth was open, and teeth gnashing in my face. I could feel warm drool hitting my cheek. I could see just how big and green its eyes were. It had slit-looking pupils opened wide. I'm not sure how long I was sitting there trying to hold it off of me. Probably only seconds. It seemed like hours. Suddenly, the weight was off of me. It was rearing back, still pinning me with its hind legs. It released another one of its ear-splitting howls. I could see it clawing at its own back. For a split second, I could swear I saw an arrow sticking out of it. I'm not sure what made me think of it, or how I got it so quickly, but suddenly I had the bayonet in my hand. I thrust it as hard as I could towards its chest. It sunk down to the hilt a lot more easily than I imagined it would. It screamed again and tried to claw at me. I tried to scramble out from under it. I managed to get 1 foot free, pushed the thing away from me. I tried to scramble backwards out of the ditch. It lurched at me again. It landed on the blade of the bayonet again. I hadn't even realized that I had kept a hold of it. I pushed it off to the side, and it held on. I had rolled on top of it. I pulled the bayonet back out of its chest. I plunged it back in, again and again and again. I don't know how many times I stuck the full blade into that thing. It stopped moving long before I was finished. The only thing I really remember during it was thinking that there wasn't a whole lot of blood. There was some, I think, but it definitely wasn't gushing or spurting or spraying. I can't be sure. I was panting. I crawled out of the ditch. It didn't move. I was confused as to where I was. My head was throbbing. My ears were ringing. Everything in my vision was fuzzy. I just started stumbling forward. My neighbor's wife found me in her backyard sometime later. I don't remember actually walking there, or aiming for there. It was certainly further away than my own backyard. Probably a good 1.5 miles away. She called an ambulance. I ended up in the hospital. Outside of a couple of scrapes and bruises, the only real injury I had was a concussion. They kept me overnight. At some point, I talked to the police. I told them that Max had gone into the woods at my house, and I went looking for him, and that I was attacked by something and had killed it with a knife and gotten away. The next day before I left, the police told me that they had found Max's body in the fridge. They said it looked like he had been attacked by a wild cat or mountain lion, and had maybe found his way into the fridge for protection but had bled out. They're still doing an investigation, I think. They didn't find another body of anything. I guess they think it either survived and crawled away, or something else had gotten a hold of it and dragged it away. There's no way it could have survived, could it? It looked like ground hamburger when I had finished. I don't know what to think. When I finally got to go home, I had to take a cab. I was pretty much on bed rest for the next few days. There was a note stuck in the frame of my front door. I don't know who wrote it or left it. On the back, it looks like it was part of a map. I'm not sure where to. Maybe someone else here knows. I'm not sure what the purpose of the note is, but I definitely think someone else was involved in this whole thing. Maybe whoever it was took that thing's body. Maybe they're shooting goddamn arrows for some reason. I left the shotgun and the bayonet at the fridge. I never heard about either of them from anybody, either. In retrospect, I'm not sure what I saw and fought and, maybe, killed. The closest out of all the suggestions I heard was maybe a Wampus cat. It certainly fits for the area we're in, and while not all the details seem to be exact, it seems like the closest. I just hope it's over. I've already lost too much. A friend of mine is dead because of it. I'm not sure what happens from here. I'm not sure how much more time I'll spend on Reddit at the moment. I need some time to decompress and to heal. My head is still pounding after trying to put this all back together. Thanks. I ain't stepped foot back in them woods since that day. Folks say it was just some wild thing, maybe mountain lion. But I saw its eyes. I felt it breathing. And I ain't forgot the way it looked at me. Like it knew my name. Max is gone. So's my dog. The cops packed it all up nice and easy. Called it coincidence. But the woods, they don't do coincidence. Some nights, I still hear the tap, tap, tap on my porch rail. Some mornings, I find muddy prints on the steps. But today was different. This morning, there were prints inside the house. One boot, one bare foot. I think it reminds me too.